Hello and welcome to the I Am Woman project, where every week we have deep, thought-provoking and interesting conversations with thought leaders, change instigators, rule breakers and creative minds who think differently, sparking creativity and inspiration. Our special guests on our show cover a variety of topics just for you, and they share their personal stories to inspire, motivate and empower you, our listener. The I Am Woman podcast is produced for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at www.catherineplano.com. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favourite RSS feed or iTunes. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get into the show. Today we have Randa Habelrih, a very special, inspirational mother. Randa overnight went from being a marketing executive in the corporate world to the mother of a child with very high needs. Randa is an author, a speaker, inclusion advocate and advisor. She is the author of the book Dealing with Autism and the founder of MATES, a school-based social inclusion and leadership program. Randa's 19 years of experience in raising a child with autism sparked a passion to help others understand the unique needs that parents, teachers and healthcare professionals have when dealing with autism. Following a heartbreaking bullying incident at school, Randa felt the need to speak directly to her son's peers via social media, and so created a YouTube video asking them to just be kind, which received a huge response from mothers and teachers. It also won a prize in a short film competition, but more importantly, his peers saw it. The book Dealing with Autism was therefore the next part of the response to the exclusion and isolation that Randa's son experienced, but it wasn't enough to just share the narrative as a society. We need to be proactive and encourage genuine, practical inclusion for our children. I am sure you're going to enjoy this heartfelt chat with Randa. Welcome to the show, Randa Habelrih. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks, Catherine. How are you?
I'm good. So we were just having a bit of a conversation around what you do. And the reason we got you on the show is you are an advocate and an advisor for dealing with autism, which I think is awesome because it's something we don't talk about often. So before we get into our conversation, I thought it'd be really good to maybe do a little bit of an intro and tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. Well, I'm now on a path that I really didn't plan on. You know, you set your goals and you think you know where you're going, but life happens. And I went overnight from being a marketing executive in the corporate world to the mother of a child with very high needs as a result of a mismanaged delivery. And one of his issues is autism. So we've faced a lot of challenges over the years, but Richard, our son, is our biggest blessing, and he's just the bravest, funniest young man that I know, and we're so blessed to have him as our son. And as a result, I've written a book about our experience. I speak on the subject. I'm an inclusion advocate, and I also advise young parents. But most importantly, I've written a school-based social inclusion and leadership program called MATES, because autism's such a wide spectrum. But one of the most common characteristics is that they have difficulty with communication, and often they can lead very lonely lives because of their inability to communicate effectively.
Yeah, and I think that the other thing that what I really love that we were talking about before we got onto the show was just about how sometimes when you live a life of somebody else's beliefs. So if, a doctor or a specialist will tell you that they will never talk again or walk again or whatever that may be, just, maybe explain a little bit about that, some of the things that was said to yourself and your husband, and how did you shift that mindset from going, you know what, I'm not going to listen to what they're saying, I'm going to live this kind of life?
Well, yes, I strongly believe that you do have the power to change things, and I've always tried not to let other people's limiting beliefs become my own. And we were told when Richard was only 6 months old by the leading pediatric neurologist at the hospital where we went that he was very, very, in a very bad way. He probably wouldn't walk. He probably wouldn't talk. He had issues with his vision and with his hearing. And when I said to the doctor, well, surely there's something we can do, he condescendingly took a moment to look up at me from his notepad and said, well, there is something. Perhaps, darling, you should go away and think about having another child to take your mind off this one. To say I was absolutely appalled is an understatement. You always think of what to respond in hindsight, but even in hindsight, I had nothing to say to him. So I walked away. But now, so many years later, I have to thank this doctor because he pretty much removed all hope in traditional medicine, and I had to find my own way, had to do my own research, and we constructed our own therapy program which helped Richard immensely, and he's come a long, long way. And back then in 1996 Google hadn't been invented, so I had to do things the old-fashioned way and go to the library. I often ask students when I'm presenting them, I tell them, how do you think I did my research if Google wasn't around? And so often they've got no clue. They don't even know how to answer the question.
Of course, I know. And with Richard, what kind of program was that? What did you do that was completely different from your research and so forth?
We did a number of programs, and if you were to ask me which one was the most successful, I probably couldn't point to it. I think it was a combination. We did Domain therapy, which was a very physical therapy. We did Sunrise, which was a play-based therapy, and also ABA, which is now considered almost, mainstream type of therapy. It's a behavior modification or an applied behavioral analysis therapy, whereby you teach a child, you break the tasks down into the smallest of parts, and you reward the successful behavior. And it's now very, very common. But back then, the parents who had started ABA were pretty much pioneers of the therapy at the time.
And what is the difference between Domain, Sunrise, and ABA?
Well, Sunrise is play-based. You try and connect with the child by entering their world. Whatever interests them, you join them. And Domain was very much physiotherapy based. So we did a lot of crawling, a lot of manipulation, and that was the most intensive initially. We had to go to the States and we were trained up in that. And ABA is it's also intensive. It is recommended that you do a minimum of 20 hours per day, and we were doing more than that. And that's one-on-one. Breaking the tasks down and rewarding the child when they do achieve, and then trying to generalize that behavior into everyday life.
Wow, 20 hours a day, that's a lot.
No, sorry, did I say 20 hours a day? I meant 20 hours a week.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, wow, where did you have time to sleep?
No, we did sleep. No, it was about, we did therapy about 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. But Richard was he was in a bad way. He had a number of issues. It wasn't just the autism.
Yeah, and he's obviously come such a long way because you were talking about how brave he is. Would you like to share some of those brave stories with us?
Well, yes, he's graduated high school, and we were absolutely thrilled, so proud. You know, there are so many young people who don't graduate high school. He travelled to Rio with his school group for World Youth Day, which was just huge. He's got a sense of humour, but where his bravery came in is that he was bullied a lot during school, and he would never ever say, "I'm not going to school." He tried his best. It was hard for him to learn, and he never really gave up. He's got a cheeky personality. He tries to manipulate situations to get out of doing things. So his personality comes through. We had to teach him everything from day one. We had to teach him how to crawl, how to sit up, how to walk. Everything. So the number of obstacles he has overcome is just unimaginable, and he still smiles, and he's got a real joy and a love of life, and he's taught me what the meaning of unconditional love is, and he's done that by example.
That's so beautiful, and he sounds very clever. Where does he get his sense of humour from?
I don't know. I'm not very funny, and I enjoy a good joke, and as does my husband. But he just comes up with some really funny things, and just the way he interprets. Also, some of the characteristics of autism, like interpreting things literally, can be quite entertaining. So. Just things like, when he was little, if you said something like pull your socks up, he would pull his socks up. Or, keep your chin up, he'd put his chin up. Or it's raining cats and dogs, he'd look out the window. So that's quite entertaining. That's not really a sense of humour. It's more, the literal interpretation of language.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. So, Randa, you sound very passionate about what you do. What drives you?
What drives me? My son drives me, and also I learnt so much in the early years from the parents who walked the path before me. I learnt more from them than from the professionals. So I want to pass on my knowledge, so that, knowledge through trial and error can be reduced. I can give them my pearls of wisdom, and hopefully they can benefit from it. I also don't want other young people to go through the loneliness that Richard experienced at school. I very much believe that children by nature are caring. They're not mean. I mean, there are exceptions, I'm sure, but generally children do want to include everybody in there, and they're quite nice to their peers, but it's just that they lack the skills. So I'm trying to change things by introducing a social program, a leadership program, and I want to empower young people with the belief that they can change things, they can include people, and they have it within them to make their community, our society, a better place for all people, not just for kids with autism. In fact, at some of the schools where this program's being trialled, the principals have said we want this extended beyond just kids with autism. There are so many children who have issues with socialisation, so that's what we're doing now.
Yeah, I was going to say that's not excluding, that's for all children when you're talking about that, absolutely. So how do you build awareness? I know you've got a book on that, but what else do you do? Do you do keynote speaking? Like, how do you build your awareness that people learn more about what you do?
I do keynote speaking. I do workshops at schools, and I've spoken at universities to the education students. I've spoken at disability organisations, and Actually, I'm very excited about an engagement that both Richard and I have on November the 11th. We'll be speaking at the Scots College women's Christmas luncheon, and they specifically asked for both Richard and myself. And I've spoken with Richard before, and we've had so much fun. That was at the Life Start conference. He presents his story. His speech is called "I'm Just Like Everybody Else," and he injects his jokes in there. And as he delivers his nuggets of humour, he just cacks himself. He laughs along with the audience, and he's so endearing. So he certainly outshines me on the stage. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, that's gorgeous. And very high level, what are some of the things that he shares as part of his story?
His speech, the reason we wrote a speech for him was when I launched my book, I asked him, would you like to speak? And he said, what would I say? I said, I don't know. What do you want to say? He said, well, what do they want to hear? I said, they want to hear what it's like to be you. And he looked at me rather quizzically and said, but Mum, I'm just like everybody else. I said, well, there you go. You can call your speech "I'm Just Like Everybody Else" and tell people what you're like. So he talks about what it was like when he was little. He remembers, he's got an amazing memory. He remembers things that happened to him when he was in kindergarten, and that's where the worst of the physical bullying occurred. And he talks about that and how he had to leave the school and go back to being taught at home. And then he talks about his high school experiences and his favourite teachers. And then he talks about his hopes and dreams, how he wants to drive a car. And then he says, but my mum said I shouldn't worry about that because Mum and Dad will drive me anywhere I want to go. They'll be my taxi service for me. He also talks about what he's doing for work and invites everybody over to come and have a coffee with him at the coffee shop. And that he'd like to move away from home and possibly live with his sister or with his friends. So it's really just about his past and and about his hopes and aspirations, said in his words, his way.
Oh, how beautiful! I'd love to see that. It sounds so. You've just given me goosebumps. So beautiful. So, with the benefits of hindsight, what would you have done differently?
I think I would have trusted my own instincts more. We're conditioned to ask questions from the professionals and sometimes silence our own instinct. So that's what I wish I did more of all through my life, not just with Richard.
Yeah. And with that, what advice would you give your younger self?
I had such poor self-confidence as a teenager. I think that's, fairly common. The adolescence is tough, but I really didn't like myself a lot. And I'd just like to go back and say, do you know what? You're amazing. You have so much strength and you need to believe in yourself and trust yourself. That's what I'd like to say to my younger self.
It's quite interesting when as you know, we have spoken to amazing women, inspirational women, and like yourself. And it's interesting when we talk about advice to younger self, we look at, that's one of the things that comes up a lot is about the self-love and the self-trust. And I wonder, it's one of those things that I still practice today. And I wonder if that just gets better as we become older and wiser.
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of that for me happened when I turned 40. That's when I was able to really be comfortable in my own skin and like myself. And you know what? I learned to say no. It took me that long to learn to say no. And that was huge for me because I wanted to please everybody. I would say yes, even though it would have been challenging to accept a task or to accept an invitation or whatever it was. But that's when it all sort of fell into place for me. So it does take time, but even confidence as a teenager, I lacked so much confidence. In my workshops now, I do really simple things with the students. I just teach them to sit up straight and also walk tall. I know that I didn't walk tall when I was younger, and posture has so much to do with with how you perceive yourself, how others perceive you. And for me, that came much later in life.
And I love the walking tall piece, because that's actually a way to shift your mindset, because
Absolutely.
if you don't have the confidence and you're slouching over a chair or over a table, your body, you're actually saying to your mind, I'm not worthy, I'm whatever that may be that comes to mind for you.
Yes.
But if you actually straighten yourself and walk tall, you can actually trick your mind with your body.
Yes.
So when
yes.
we're talking about body language, it's very powerful.
It is powerful, and the response from the students is amazing. There's an instant shift. You can see it. The vibe in the room changes dramatically. So I've seen it time and time again. So it is very powerful.
And it's such a simple thing. Even I catch myself sometimes the way I sit. If I just shift my body a little bit, how much better I feel, or how much more proud or confident I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why actually earlier this year in February, I put together an event called Model Mates, because our young people with disabilities often walk with their eyes cast down, their shoulders slumped. They don't walk confidently. So I approached a couple of organisations, and we put together a fashion parade at Castle Towers, whereby our young people strutted their stuff on the catwalk alongside professional models, and the shift in their body language was amazing. In one night, at the beginning of the night, they were very nervous and they had their normal posture, but at the end, after they were celebrated and people clapped and cheered for them, and they walked as they were asked to walk. At the end of the night, they were schmoozing with the VIP guests at the cocktail party. They were smiling, laughing, approaching people, initiating conversation. It was so wonderful to watch. It was really a privilege just to be amongst them. And so that sort of that positive reinforcement is powerful. The posture's powerful, and that applies to all our children, and also to women who are often conditioned to not believe in themselves and to play second fiddle.
It's one of those things that I talk about quite a bit especially when I'm working with my customers or my clients, and we talk a little bit about public speaking, for example. And public speaking is up there, one of the scariest things you can do. And sometimes people allow that fear to override every ounce of their being. And what I say is, if you pretend to be somebody else, and what I used to do, I used to pretend that I was somebody else, big and tall, and used to hold myself in that manner, even if I was so nervous, because nobody knows you're nervous unless you tell them, or unless you're shaking like Elvis Presley. But I think that if you actually connect with that, that walking tall and being a strong stand, people will never know it. But not only that, you're going to trick your mind to believing you're confident even when you're not confident.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I love it. So, Randa, who has been your greatest influence?
I would have to say it's my son. He is my hero, and he is my teacher. And it's bizarre, the role reversal is bizarre, but he inspires me daily to become a better person. He's taught me patience. He's taught me unconditional love, and he just is, in my eyes, he is my hero.
Oh, I just love that. And I think that too, I have that mindset that I learned from my son. I also have a son. And how old's Richard?
He's 20.
20. Oh, okay. So my son's just turned 22, but I always say that I learned so much from him. He has taught me so much. And I can relate to the whole patience piece, because I quite often, in the past, not so much now, when there were moments where I was feeling a certain way, he'd be saying, you know what, Mum, just chill, just relax. And just to hear those words, like, oh, that's my son saying this to me. And it's amazing, because you just automatically look up to them and go, wow, where did you get that wisdom from?
Absolutely. Oh, today, something really bizarre happened. My husband parked in the driveway and I backed out without even looking and crashed straight into him. So the day didn't start well, and I was quite cranky with my husband for parking in the driveway, even though it was me that crashed. And I was driving Richard to the bus stop, and he said to me, Mum, promise me when you go home, promise me you'll hug Dad. Promise me. And I said, I will, Richard, let's just focus. And he said, no, Mum. And he kept reminding me that, I should just hug my husband and stop being cranky. And he said, it's just metal, Mum. And I thought, here's this child who technically has the disability, and he's the one telling me how I should view the entire situation. It's no big deal. It's just, some metal that got crushed, and I should go and hug my husband. I found that extraordinary.
It is, isn't it? Because we can get so quite intense and caught up in the whole emotion, when in reality it's just metal.
Yes, yeah.
It is. So, Randa, we always ask our women of inspiration to describe one word that would best describe your personal brand. What would be that one word?
Empower. Definitely. Empower. Yeah.
So can I ask you why? I can see why you empower lots of other people, women, children, and so forth, but for yourself?
For myself, I think if you don't feel that you have the strength to face your challenges, then you can't face them. And there are always good things that come out of even the worst situations. And you need to be empowered to get yourself through them, to get your family through them. And that's what I live by now, empowering yourself and empowering those around you. And for me, I'm also passionate about empowering our youth and women, because so many women, especially if they're obliged to stay home and look after a child with a disability, they lose touch with the world. They lose touch with friends, with their workplace, and they lose themselves. And I just want to empower women to find themselves and to be the best advocates they can be for their families and for themselves.
I love the fact that you talked about finding the positive in any challenge. It doesn't matter how bad, and having a look at that as what would be the opportunity here, because it really helps you move forward with things, doesn't it, rather than getting stuck in it.
Oh, definitely. If you focus on the worst of the situation, you'll get stuck there and you won't be able to move forward. Did I plan to have a child with autism? No, I didn't. Do I wish that Rich didn't have the challenges that he has? I wish he didn't have so many challenges. But would I change him? I wouldn't change him for the world, because, as I said, he's taught me. And also, I've met the most amazing people on our journey. Some wonderful people. I've made new best friends. I've met some wonderful advocates, professionals, teachers. So many people I would never have come in contact with. So, you know, it was a detour, but a detour that I a lot of good came from.
And you wouldn't be where you are today without it.
That's right. That's right. That journey is a part of who I am and has made me the person who I am today.
Oh, it's beautiful. So, Randa, as we wrap up the show, we always ask our women of inspiration to leave 3 golden nuggets for our listeners. So what would be your 3 golden nuggets for our listeners, please?
Well, 3 it was tough for me to whittle it down to 3 because I've written a whole chapter in my book called How to Develop a Success Mindset. But the 3 are, the first one is believe in yourself. You must believe in yourself. You've got the power. You've got the strength. You just have to allow it to surface. The second one is turn your focus outwards when you're feeling so down and out or negative or weighed down by challenges. You just have to look around you and count your blessings. You know, there are people who don't have a roof over their heads, who have nothing in the fridge, who are in, you know, abusive relationships. When we were in the neonatal intensive care ward with Richard, I used to just pray to God and say, God, let me just take my baby home. And there were families who weren't able to take their baby home. You know, I got to take mine home. So I was forever grateful that prayer was answered. There's always someone who's doing it a lot tougher. And then when you do focus outwards, you can give. And when it is so true that in giving you receive much, much more. So try and you know, expand your horizons, reach out to people, and you'll find a lot of satisfaction, and your self-confidence will grow. So I really believe that you should turn your focus outwards and try and be of service to others. And the third one is tap into your spirituality, whatever your spirituality is. In my instance, I'm Christian, but if you know, even if you take up meditation or yoga, whatever it is, tap into your spirituality. Find what centers you at your very core, and that's where I found my peace and my acceptance of my situation. It was my spirituality, and a lot of people are dismissive of that, but it's so powerful.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I love the 3 golden nuggets. There's one question in believing yourself. What about if one, and this is for our listeners because I'm sure they're probably thinking the same thing. What about if one struggles believing in themselves? How do you believe in yourself if you don't believe in yourself?
If you don't believe in yourself, I think the best way to start is just, as we were talking about tricking our mind with our posture, is just to trick yourself and just write down some positive affirmations such as I am strong, I am successful, whatever it is that resonates with you, and just constantly say it day in, day out, and slowly expand that repertoire, and you will begin to believe it. And your subconscious is powerful and works even while you're sleeping. Also, be mindful of what you're watching, what you're listening to. I try and put on inspirational talks on my iPad or my phone, so that when I am sitting on a plane or driving in my car, I'm listening to inspirational speakers, and I end up adopting a lot of their philosophies just by listening to them. So initially, just listen and trick yourself by repeating those positive affirmations. It may sound very simplistic, but you know what? It is simple.
Yeah, and it does work. I agree. I do that too. I listen to some inspirational people while I'm driving. I don't watch the news. I don't read the newspaper. I'm very conscious about what I feed my mind.
Absolutely. That's it. That's key.
So, Randa, how will our listeners find you, and what's the best platform for them to connect with you?
Facebook is very good. I've got my own personal page, my name, Randa Habelrih. I've also got a Dealing with Autism page and a Mates page. I'm also on LinkedIn and Instagram, and of course a YouTube channel. And it was a YouTube video that started me on this journey, which was a response to a horrific bullying incident that Richard experienced when he was 16. I thought, that's it. I'm going to just, try and reach his peers through YouTube. So, I love social media. I'm self-taught because I was in my own cocoon for so many years with Richard's therapy, but social media is the best way. And also I've got my website, which is www.dealingwithautism.com.au or randahabelrih.com.
Randa, thank you so much for your time and your energy and this heartfelt conversation. I absolutely enjoyed it, and I really can't wait till I see Richard or meet Richard. He sounds like a wonderful man, absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much for your time and energy.
Thank you for your time, Catherine. Really appreciate it. It was fun too.
Always fun, always fun. Thank you so much.
Okay.
That brings us to the end of another episode. I hope you enjoyed the show, as it is my mission to reach out and inspire as many individuals like you. And one of the best ways to help us achieve this goal is by giving us a good review on iTunes. It's easy and it only takes about 10 seconds. If you have any questions or special guests that you would like to hear from, please send us an email to support@catherineplano.com.au and we will get right back to you. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter or Facebook @Catherine Plano. That's it for now. Thanks for listening. Until next week, please take care.